as my disclosure sign, I'd say that basically not only are the medications off-label, the whole field's off-label, right? But that's all good.
But that's all good. The whole field of gender switching is, quote, off-label, says a doctor who's right at the center of that entire industry, where they claim that people can change their sex, and they are doing all sorts of awful, untested things to children that are permanently ruining their lives, and they know it. They know it. These are the findings of a new investigation done by the Daily Caller News Foundation, looking into the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, known as the leading authority in the field of so-called gender medicine. There's a big tranche of new documents and audio to share with you. It all comes to us courtesy of the work of this reporter, Kate Anderson. She's a reporter for the Daily Caller News Foundation and joins us now. Kate, so good to have you with us.
Hi, Vince. Thanks so much for having me back.
Kate, set this up for us. What have you come into? What have you discovered?
Yeah, so my colleague and I, Megan Brock, at the Daily Caller News Foundation, there was a series of public records requests that were submitted. We were trying to get some more information about WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. And what we got back was a document full of almost 30 hours of videos of WPATH Global Education Institute, and they do this pretty regularly. I want to say it's every 2 years. And that institute is to train doctors and mental health professionals internationally how to implement transgender care according to WPATH's guidelines. So what we got was an inside look at the training, the base training ground for all these doctors across the world. And all of this, again, this trickles down all the way down to your local pediatrician's office. So this is really big stuff. Yeah,
this is huge. I've got some of this audio I want to start sharing and get your reaction to it as we go through it. Here's a WPATH faculty member and a gender doctor that claimed that it doesn't matter what kind of mental health issues somebody has, they should go through sex change surgery. Take a listen.
I hear a lot about psychosis and estrogen, so if you can specifically speak to that and to anything else that might be more than just this person's really unstable, is it a good or bad idea to start, or more data or resources where I could go?
I don't think, so my personal opinion is that this is not a thing for either hormone. I think I would probably frame it, are they mentally stable to go for wisdom tooth extraction right now? Like
no, that's very helpful. The idea of
an elective
right.
surgery thing, or something where they can both give consent, could cope with an unexpected event that took place on it, responsible enough to do with it.
It's about capacity and self-management. Yeah, I can assess for that.
Yeah, I think that's where I'd frame that. I don't think it's a hormone thing. Again, most people get happier, which is why we're doing that, which tends to be helpful for mental health.
That's a
lot of laughter there as he says that mental health itself should not be a barrier to sterilizing patients.
Well, and I think that's really telling, the fact that there was just a ton of laughing, and we see that a lot throughout the videos if you watch more of them. But one thing in particular that I want to hit on that he said is, like, when people go on these treatments, they get happier. That's not been the case, and these doctors admit that multiple times. So they, one doctor, Dr. Gail Knudsen, she talks about how, another doctor talks about how if a patient goes through sex change surgery and they have a history of psychosis, so like let's say they have schizophrenia, she recommends that they be taken from the surgical recovery ward and put in the psych ward just as a precaution in case they might have a freak out after the surgery. Another doctor talks about how it would be worse for a patient to start menstruation, so a female who's trying to transition to a male to start menstruation, it would be worse for that as opposed to taking hormones, which could make her psychosis worse. And so doctors, they admit that this is not something that improves mental health. And I think that's something that we really should be paying attention to, because that's the main argument that we've been hearing for years. Yes,
in fact, here's an example. Here's one of the WPATH doctors talking about how he's had children who are his patients with schizophrenia, and how he's had to dial back the testosterone. This would be for girls with schizophrenia. He's dialing back the testosterone on them in order to, quote, keep the voices down from their schizophrenia.
I have had a few kids with schizophrenia who do notice that if they push their testosterone too much, that it seems to them that it makes things a little bit worse. So the patients with schizophrenia are doing well on their meds, and so they will sometimes moderate their dose a little bit just to keep the voices down or whatever the bad symptom is.
This sounds so evil to me, Kate. They're talking about it so casually that you have, basically patients with severe mental health problems, and they're injecting them with artificial chemicals.
Yeah, that video actually was one of probably the most disturbing to me, just because, if you think about it, like, schizophrenia is a serious illness. It's also pretty rare, but there is actually a lot of crossover between patients who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria and patients who are diagnosed with schizophrenia. It's very high. And doctors are researching that. But yeah, like what he's talking about, it's incredibly serious. You have these poor young girls who are struggling with something so serious, and he doesn't say that he is reducing their dose. He's saying they have to moderate their own dose. And so that they're having to do that. He's giving stuff to them, and then he's saying they moderate their dose in order to keep the voices down. I can't even imagine that, or like their parents. Knowing that your child is on something and that could be making the voices worse. And to be so cavalier about it is disturbing.
Cavalier is a good way to describe the attitudes of most of the people that you've captured in these videos, or that were captured in these videos that you've obtained. Among them is a WPATH doctor called Scott Leibovitz, who talks about how these children are being pushed to make life-altering decisions, and they basically go with, if the kid seems to kind of feel good with it, that's good enough for them. They're not going to stop them after that. Take a listen.
But an adolescent who says, I'm just going to adopt, leave me alone, is different than an adolescent who says, I don't really care about this right now, but I realize I'm a teenager. Maybe when I'm older, I could change my mind, but I don't think I will. That second group shows that that adolescent is capable of understanding that they don't know what their life may be like. That's the type of young person that is, understands that their decisions that they're making now are impacting them, and they could be appropriate for their future, or they might not be. And it's not up to us to say, well, if your thing is going to change in time, if your priorities change in time, well, then we shouldn't do this. No, it's to say, great, you understand that. Now let's move forward with what you feel you need.
That audio, what he just said is he's absolving himself of guilt for the future damage that's going to take place for these kids, because these kids he's basically saying, look, the kid thought about it. They came up with a decision. So if they're infertile, if they can't have children, if their lives are destroyed going forward, not my problem.
Well, and to say, you as the adult, as the doctor, as the quote-unquote expert, to sit there and say, it's not my job to tell the kid no, when it comes to a risky procedure. No, that's precisely your job. Like, you are the one who is the, again, quote unquote expert in this field. And so it is your job. And just like you said, Vince, like he's absolving himself of responsibility. And to suggest that a child who says, yeah, I could regret this later, but I want this now. Like, what child doesn't say that? They're immediate beings. They want things now, and they want things fixed now, because they have no concept of the future or what they could want, because they're children.
Yeah.
That's why we don't let children make big decisions. That's why they have parents. So yeah, just the fact that that's his threshold for consent, it's wild.
It's horrifying. Here's another one for you. A WPATH doctor talking about something called phalloplasties. This is the creation of artificial, fake male genitals for girls, usually crafted from the skin on their forearm. They remove skin from the forearm and they make it look like a simulated male genital, and then they attach it to the girl. It's unbelievable what they're doing to these girls. And here's a doctor saying that it's merely an adventure. They're embarking on an adventure, like it's like some fun event.
Is there a higher incidence of phalloplasties now than 10 years ago?
Definitely. Not to the level of reaching the incidence of vaginoplasty, but we're seeing more phalloplasties, yes. And young individuals. Yeah, they're ready to embark on the adventure. I tell them, it's going to be an adventure when we're both together in there, because we have to get to your goals, but there's going to be a few bumps along the way, right? I mean, it could be delays because of complications. Definitely there will be complications, either it's stenosis, fistulas, or partial necrosis, wound healing delays and stuff like that.
What's the average length of time from beginning surgery to?
For 3 stages, it's at least probably a year to a year and a half is the very least you can expect.
In order to create a simulated genital for the girl. So here in this audio, I noticed a couple things, but one of them is that they talk in these euphemisms. They make it seem like this is fun. They use words like adventure. Is that a feature of these videos, that they all talk like this?
Yeah, it's weird because they do it to a point. Sometimes they're really almost scarily blatant about what they're talking about, and then other times, yeah, they use a lot of these euphemisms like adventure. But like when he's referring to adventure, it's like, why would you describe complications such as tissue death, which is what he's saying there, like tissue necrosis, tissue death from trying to make a penis out of a vagina. Why would you say that is an adventure, or it's just a few bumps along the way? An average surgery to get a genital reconstruction surgery like that, it's going to take at least a year to a year and a half, at least. And he says there, you are pretty much guaranteed to have complications. So what part of that is an adventure? And it's just, again, like the word I used before, they're just very, very cavalier about something that is so serious, and that we have seen, as detransitioners have come out, it is incredibly harmful to these young people that are my peers. This is my generation.
Yeah. Kate Anderson, another piece of audio here addresses something that the left often says. They often claim in public that children who are put in puberty blockers, that's a reversible situation. Once you go on puberty blockers, it's fine. It just delays puberty for a bit, but it's reversible. No harm, no foul. That's not what these gender industry people say behind closed doors. Here's WPATH Dr. Scott Leibowitz talking about puberty blockers.
There's challenges with puberty suppression that we have to acknowledge. And that's why it's reversible asterisk. One cannot be on puberty suppression endlessly. And clinically, I can tell you it's a challenging issue when you start a kid on puberty suppression and then they want to stay on puberty suppression because they don't want to even make decisions about either of the two hormones. And then you get to a place where physiologically we need hormones. And was I joking with you in the break about there's no such thing as non-binary osterone? Sadly, the hormones are binary. Okay, so
science exists.
There's other challenges, and I see some talks on the schedule in the upcoming meeting, particularly for the trans feminine population. If one suppresses puberty and doesn't allow genital development to take place, certain surgeons have indicated that can be a challenge if the adolescent ultimately desires gender-affirming surgery, lower surgery when they're older. Ugh. Now you try having that conversation with a parent of an 11-year-old about their child's future maybe orgasm. And so you can see how complicated this is, and that's why I think when we just say, oh, puberty blockers, it's just reversible, and it's a very non-invasive treatment, I would say it's more invasive than oftentimes like the media makes it out to be, or other people.
Well, the admission he's making is in the service of future sex change surgery. So it's still a demented goal. But here you have him admitting, this Dr. Scott Leibowitz, admitting something that you never hear the left say in public, which is that puberty blockers can have irreversible damaging effects on the kids that they're applied to.
Well, and it's really interesting because, again, this is a WPATH training conference, and WPATH's own guidelines that were released just days prior to this claim that puberty-blocking medication administered to children that show the first signs of physical changes is fully reversible. And then he's saying, well, they're reversible asterisk. And, we had the CASC review come out a month ago or so, and showing that, like, puberty blockers, there are a lot more effects to this that either we don't know about fully or that we do know about that are extremely concerning. And so you've got England and Scotland who are pulling back and completely cutting off their programs. And I believe it was Dr. Cass today saying that, you know, the U.S. is kind of behind when it comes to gender affirming care, not in the sense that they need to speed it up, but that almost like they're going too fast.
Yes.
And this is the kind of stuff that she's talking about. It's like, you know, and I think it's important to note, Leibowitz and WPATH knew this 2 years ago. The Cass review came out this year. So this was well known that this wasn't really reversible years ago. And yet, what have we been hearing for the last 2 years, Vince? That it is reversible. That, oh, anybody who says otherwise is making that up. That it's just fear-mongering. Well, that doesn't appear to be the case.
No, not at all. There is a massive, there's so much audio I couldn't even get to because we're talking about many, many, many hours of content here, all obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. Kate Anderson, one of the reporters on the byline there, an excellent scoop. And for anybody who wants more information on this, you should definitely check out their work. Kate, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, and we'll have you back again soon.